And now, please welcome New York Times editor and writer, Bari Weiss.
It is such a thrill to be here in front of so many women of valor, and that is really what you guys are. My family has always been involved in the Federation. I remember volunteering for Super Sundays when I was a little kid. But this year, in the aftermath of the massacre at Tree of Life, the synagogue where I was bat mitzvahed in Pittsburgh, I got to see the work that you do in a whole new way. I saw the way that the Federation led not just the Jewish community, but the greater Pittsburgh community with wisdom, generosity, and sensitivity. So I want to thank you to start for the really world-changing work that you all do. Please give yourselves a round of applause. So speaking of world-changing, I am so honored to be up here to introduce someone who I consider a modern Jewish heroine. Aly Raisman has been compared to Queen Esther, and it's really not such a stretch. Queen Esther, you'll remember, had risen to the heights of the Persian Empire, and she decided to use all of her political and social capital, really at risk to her life, to save a voiceless people. In that case, the Jewish people, her own. Likewise, Aly Raisman has used her voice to speak on behalf of the voiceless, so many survivors of sexual abuse in this country and around the world that don't have the perch that she has. She has used her power to empower others. Her book, not surprisingly, is called Fierce, and anyone who saw her in that courtroom knows that she can roar. Please join me in welcoming Olympian and gold medal winner Aly Raisman. You're gonna sit right there. So first of all, I'm sorry about your arm. I find it amazing that someone who is a professional gymnast has never broken a bone before, and it took, I guess, falling down the stairs. So I hope it heals soon.
Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for having me. I'm very excited to be here. But yeah, it's pretty ironic. I survived all of my gymnastics without ever breaking a bone, and then I fell down the stairs and broke my elbow. So I'm trying to think of it as a positive, that at least it was just my elbow and I didn't hit my head or anything. But usually, if any of you know gymnasts, they're usually pretty clumsy. So I'm very focused in the gym, but then outside of it, I trip a lot. And I was always the person as a kid that would spill drinks at the table and stuff. So I just need to be a little bit more aware when I'm not, when I don't have to be hyper-focused.
Yeah, clumsy is not the word that would come to mind having watched you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know the names of the things you do. That's how complicated they are. So I think we'll start with the past sort of epic year that you've had. You've been a public figure and a world-class athlete for a long time. But this year, the world got to know you in a much deeper way. I'd love for you to sort of take us back to where you were before you spoke out about your experience with Larry Nassar and where you are now and sort of how the past year has changed you.
I feel like the last year, it's really hard to put into words because there's been so many, it just feels like it's been forever, not just a year, since I've come forward. I think about a month and a half ago, it marked the year from when I came forward publicly, and I can't believe it's just been over a year. It seems like it's been a lot longer, and I think that all of myself and a lot of the other survivors, we just wish that that we could understand the full extent of the problem and that we could actually be able to be working with the organizations and kind of move in a step forward. And I think that's been really hard, is not only having to kind of be in a standstill and waiting for the investigations to be over and waiting for the organizations to actually take accountability, because we're also still processing it. So I've been doing a lot of self-care and taking care of myself, especially in the last couple of months. And I think just learning to really be in tune with my body and listen to my needs has been really important, because dealing with something like that is very difficult. But then doing it on a public level, I've learned I've gotten so much more support than I ever could have imagined, and I'm so grateful for that. And now I'm trying to navigate how you can nicely say to people, because people bring it up to me all the time, which is awesome that people are so supportive, but if I'm at a wedding or I'm at a surprise party or I'm at a New Year's Eve party, I'm like, I just really don't want to talk about what happened in that way, and I'm trying to find a way, because I'm a people pleaser, and I'm trying to find the balance between, you know, saying thank you so much for supporting me, but I think sometimes people want to go into detail and they want to know every bit, and I'm like, I would love to talk about you. Sometimes I just get like, so I'm learning that balance, but at the same time, I take a step back, and I'm so appreciative of how supportive people are. It's been absolutely amazing. So I think the last year has just been so much more, it's just been so crazy. I could have never, ever imagined it, but I definitely am seeing a shift in our culture. I think people are talking about it more, and I think more people are feeling more comfortable sharing their story, and hopefully more people feel heard, which is a positive. But I think the Me Too movement definitely needed to happen. I wish it happened a very, very long time ago, or I wish it actually never even had to happen. But there's definitely still a lot more to go as well.
How will you know if, as sort of one of the major faces of the Me Too movement, how will you know if the movement has been a success? How do you judge success in a sort of a cultural shift like this?
I think that's a tough question, but I feel like when we really start to hear that it's happening less and less, and I think that it's sort of, it's interesting, because I think the more that it's talked about, the less common it will be, and I think that the moment that for any single person that has a child, or any single coach that's coaching children, or any person that's around children, even if you're around children once a month, I think every single person has to be educated to prevent child abuse. And I've partnered with Darkness to Light. We have, it's fliptheswitchcampaign.org. You can take the course for free. And if you type in Flip the Switch, it's for free. And it's a 2-hour course. And you know, I've tried to get my high school to do it. I've tried to get so many different people to do the course, and it's very, unfortunately, it's not surprising with how common sexual abuse is, how hard it is to get people to take a 2-hour course. I would think within the last year, seeing how common it is, I think people should be afraid to not take any course. If you don't want to take the Darkness to Light one, that's fine. Maybe do another one, but I just think the moment that any child is in a sport and all the adults around them are educated, and also the children are educated, because if the adults aren't educated, then the kids won't know what to look out for, then we can really take a step back and start to feel a little bit more comfortable. But if the adults around, not every adult is educated on how to prevent it, then that's a huge problem, because you're not going to be able to see the red flags.
So let's fast forward, I don't know, 5, 10 years from now. I don't want to presume anything, but let's imagine you have a daughter or a son, and they say to you, Mom, I want to be just like you, I want to do gymnastics. Would you support that decision? And if so, what steps would you take to make sure that they were in a safe environment?
Well, in 5 to 10 years,
or 20.
Yes, whatever,
Some
whatever
egg
it is. USA Gymnastics will be the safest sport, because I don't want to stop until, and I know the other survivors won't stop until it is that way. So if my kids want to do gymnastics, I will definitely support that. I hope that one day, you know, child abuse education will be mandated in every single sport and every single schooling system. I hope it's talked about more at colleges, in the workplace, and I think there's also a lot of confusion in the workplace, and I think a lot of men are confused at the right way to act around women, and so I think that there needs to be a lot more courses and education that people have to do, so that there's less confusion. And if you're confused about something, to ask questions, and you know, the education on victim shaming as well, because people have to realize that, you know, it's very hard to come forward, and a lot of people, when people come forward, choose to believe that women are making it up for, you know, attention and money, and that's very, very wrong. And I wish people really understood how common it really was, because if they did, I don't think that they would say those things.
Right, and I think also sometimes it's not about confusion, but it's just about feeling entitled to women and not treating them with the same level of respect. You gave this wonderful quote I saw in the Wall Street Journal once where you said, you know, you have to be a little bit crazy to do gymnastics. I'm wondering if you've always been a little crazy, and like what is the shape of your craziness, and how was it shown, and at what age, and how did you know that like you wanted to dedicate yourself to a sport that just is brutal by sort of every measure?
Well, I always just really loved gymnastics, and I started when I was 2. I was absolutely obsessed with it, and I think when I say crazy, I feel like I would, you know, miss out on hanging out with my friends on Halloween. I would miss out on, you know, the school dances and, you know, all the hanging out with my friends after school. I just wanted to be at the gym all the time, but you know, when I was doing it in the moment, there was nothing more that I'd rather be doing than gymnastics. I think when I look back, I'm very amazed that I continued to do it for so many years, because it's just it takes so much of your time. And you know, there were so many days where I would be running to school and I would be a couple minutes late, just covered in chalk, and my hair was chalky, and I just don't think I cared about anything else besides, I mean, I cared about school, obviously. I just mean not feeling self-conscious that I was covered in chalk. I think I felt a little bit self-conscious, but gymnastics was more important to me than how I looked at school. But you know, sometimes I would show up with just like chalk on my face and in my hair and everything, and I would just be rushing to get to class. So it was just, I loved gymnastics so much, and that's where, you know, I always wanted to be. So, but I think when I set my mind to do something, I believe that it's going to happen, and I think there's a difference between believing it's going to happen and if it doesn't happen, feeling like your life is over. I always felt like I had a good balance of that, and maybe from my parents, but if you have a dream and it doesn't come true, knowing that you gave it your all and did the best that you could, and nothing is as it seems, or nothing's going to be as perfect as you want it to be. So just that sort of helped me a lot, was I really wanted to do it and nothing was going to stop me, but I also realized if it didn't happen, I would still be okay, which I think is very important and something I think a lot of athletes can relate to. If you want to train or you want to get to this level and sometimes it doesn't happen, and you have to realize you're more than just your sport.
So speaking of your parents, I know that you captured the world's attention, obviously, at the Olympic Games, but your parents were sort of these other stars, because watching them in the stands was like the greatest experience. Like, I went back, you guys should go look. I went back and looked at like some supercuts of them. I love them so much. I'm sure many people in this room can like see in them their own parents. Can you talk a little bit about how they shaped you? Just from their body language, you can see how invested they are in you and how much they love you. Can you give us a little bit of a sense of your home life, and maybe how your Jewishness played into your home life?
Yeah, so my parents look crazy, but they're really not. They're really not the stage parents that they looked like. My parents were actually the opposite. Like, there was days where they would tell my coaches, I think she's doing too much. I think they were sort of the opposite with not pushing me, which if they had pushed me, I would have never survived. And I can't tell you how many, you know, times when I'm in a gym and I see a mom yelling at their kid, and I always just feel so bad for the kid, and I just instantly know that poor kid is never going to make it, just because the coaches already push the athletes enough. And then when they go home and they have to have dinner with their family, but instead of having a dinner and talking about other things, they're getting in trouble for falling off the beam and all these things. And I've seen that happen so many times. And I've had teammates that were much better than me when I was younger, but their parents were so on them all the time and didn't stop talking about gymnastics, and they ended up stopping because it was too much and it wasn't enjoyable for them anymore. So I am one of 4 kids, so I think that also helps. That when I came home, I loved being the big sister, and I would hang out with my siblings. And so,
are you the oldest?
Yes, I'm the oldest. So I loved, you know, taking care of my sisters. I'm 8 and 6 years older than them, and 2 years older than my brother. So I loved being the big sister and hanging out with them. And so my parents just really tried to make sure I understood that if I They didn't care if I was winning. It was more important to them that I was a good person. And they always said that people will remember you for the kind of person you are rather than what place you are on the podium. And I always thought they were just saying that to make me feel better because I didn't always win when I was younger. But I think that they were, or not I think, I know that they were right. And I think it's really cool that we're starting to see even a shift in our society where I think it used to be just sort of, you know, black or white. If you won first place at the Olympics, you were going to be in all of these, get to do all these fun opportunities. And I think it's really changing now where a lot of athletes are speaking up about different things and you're seeing them get these cool opportunities, which I would much rather, you know, hear somebody talk about what they're passionate about and the good things that they're doing for the world. And I don't care what place they are. I don't care how they're ranked, much more than someone who's first place that's just not a nice person. And, you know, there's many people out there that are first place and wonderful people. I know them, but I think we all can agree. We've seen, you know, for example, in the NFL where there's a football player that is a great athlete. He beats a woman and then he gets away with it. And so that to me is just unacceptable and I don't really care to watch them play or listen because it's wrong.
So you first got on my radar in 2012 with your floor routine set to Hava Nagila, and I bet there's a lot of other people in this room who felt that way. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be?
Sure. So I believe my mom actually found that music on YouTube. It was a very hard process trying to find floor music, and I wanted, you know, I didn't really know what I wanted, but, you know, my coaches wanted folk music, and they wanted something that was sort of a song that instantly, you know, people would hear and would recognize. And so we were looking for a really long time, and my mom found it on YouTube, and it just really clicked, and I really liked it, and I competed with it the year before the Olympics, and I was successful with it, and it seemed like the judges liked it, and so I ended up performing it at the Olympics. I had no idea how much of an impact it would have on the Jewish community. I really didn't realize that. And so
what was that like? Like, were people coming up to you constantly about it?
Yeah, it was it was very, I just didn't expect it. I mean, I had just finished high school, and so I really didn't, I went from nobody recognizing me ever to people knowing my name, and so it was just, it really did happen for me overnight, and it was really crazy, but it was so cool to see how supportive people were, and I really didn't realize at the time, you know, representing not only the United States, but also the Jewish community, which is very, very cool, and such a huge honor. But I also received a letter from a Holocaust survivor that said she never imagined in her life that she would see, you know, a young Jewish girl performing to Hava Nagila and to have not only, you know, judges from all over the world rooting for me, but to say that it was the best. And so that, I think in that moment, I really realized how cool it was, because keep in mind, I was just 18 years old. So I think as time goes on, I appreciate it more and I have more time to reflect. But that's really, really cool to me. And I didn't realize how big of an impact it would have.
Sometimes Sometimes I joke with my family that being a, you know, sort of an outspoken Jewish woman at the New York Times, I feel like I have like a giant kippah on my head at all times. Do you feel that way ever in the world? And if so, how does it affect the way that you move through the world, or your behavior, or your sense of pressure, really, to sort of live up to being people's, not just role model, but specifically in this room and in the Jewish world, they're Jewish role model?
Yeah, you know, it's horrible because this past year, oh, well, I didn't mean.
Don't take that out of context.
I didn't mean it, yeah, I'm saying what I'm about to say makes sense. But I think that I'll start with this. I think that a lot of people don't realize the pressure that I feel all the time, and how much I've learned just to kind of sometimes take a step back and to realize that I can't fix everything, and I don't have to put pressure on myself to try to fix everything. And that's really hard when, on the one hand, I feel so lucky that I have a voice and that I'm being heard, and that, you know, myself and so many others have been able to make change in the gymnastics world, but we still have more to go. So I put pressure on myself to continue to speak out, but I've also learned that you know, this is not going to be something that changes overnight, so I have to take breaks from it and take time for myself. But going back to what you said, I had really, at least to my knowledge, I mean, I'm sure I've had in the past with social media, you can't, you know, read that stuff, but I had never experienced any kind of anti-Semitism before until, I would say, the past year, which is really devastating, just to sometimes feel like in one way with the Me Too movement we're going forward, but then I sometimes get worried in other ways we're completely going backwards. And that has been another thing that of course has been on my mind a lot, of just how it's a really, really big problem. And I feel very lucky to say, to my knowledge, I didn't experience any anti-Semitism, but I have lately, and that's really unacceptable to me and horrible, and I know it exists, and I know that it is a really huge problem, but I've been seeing it a lot more, and that is awful.
All on social media?
I've seen it, I mean, I think I've seen a lot of it on social media, not to me. You know, there's only been a couple people, and a couple people is too many. But I've seen, you know, a lot of things in the news. You know, there's just a lot of different things that's a really big problem and something that needs to be addressed. But again, there was a problem, you know, summer with a group of people, and the adults around them didn't think it was a big deal. So again, it's the education is really important, and it's hard for me to justify why do people need to be educated on preventing anti-Semitism or child abuse, but they do. And so that's a problem. If the kids are doing something wrong, but the adults around them don't care, then that's an even bigger issue because they're enabling it to continue.
I'm being told I have to wrap it up, unfortunately, so one last question, which is, your book is called Fierce, which I think is an amazing title. The people in this room call themselves the Lions of Judah. How would you advise women in this room and, you know, the women who are sort of connected to the women in this room, their children, their grandchildren, to harness their ferocity? What advice would you sort of give everyone here?
I would say to take care of yourself and to take time for yourself every single day. If you don't have 5 minutes to take care of yourself, then you need to take an hour every single day. I know everyone's really busy, but taking at least 5 minutes for yourself, even 1 minute, is just, if you're really, really busy, just say that you have to go to the bathroom and just stand in the bathroom and just take a minute to yourself and relax. You know, get creative with how you can take a moment for yourself, but it's really important to kind of ground yourself. I have been meditating, I read a lot, I have been writing in a journal, I keep a gratitude journal. So I think that as long as you're focusing on yourself, then you can really be the best you want to be. And I also think doing visualizations of realizing what kind of life you would want to live in an excuse-free world. If nothing was impossible, what would that life be? And then maybe write down what's preventing you from having that life, and telling yourself that you can have that life and to be and to do or to live wherever you want to be.
Aly, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go out this way.